Hey there, welcome to this week's tutorial. If you've watched the past two tutorials, you have seen these fonts already. I told you I was going to be obsessed with them and use them a million times, and here we are, so no shame. We are making a sweet little name sign today, and it is going to have two layers. So on my layer, or on my sign, I'm going to do white oak backing with some really gorgeous acrylic lettering. I plan to use 3M 467 to adhere my pieces together. I highly recommend this over gluing. Gluing just ruins your life sometimes, but using 3M is a lot simpler than you might think. And I know that the cost sometimes scares people off right up front there, but I have purchased one roll in my whole life and it's still going strong. So if you've got questions about using 3M, I have a reel on my Instagram account at the Fable Tree that you can go check out. Or if you've got questions, just drop them in the comments and I'll help you out. Okay, let's get started. So we're going to start with the type tool. And I'm using the Wild Things font for this, and it's actually a font duo, which is nice because I don't know, I'm not always super confident in my font pairings. It sometimes takes me a lot of time to research and put together fonts that I think are pretty and work well with each other. So it's really nice when you can buy a font duo and they're already matched for you. So I'm going to be using the Wild Things Script Bold and the Wild Things Bold. So start with the Wild Things Script Bold. And I'm going to do the name Sophia. Let's go ahead and just make this large enough that we can see it. Okay. My final piece is actually going to be pretty small because this isn't for, a wall, but you could absolutely make it larger if you wanted to. So I wrote my name out there, and now we're going to I'm using the selection tool and it's nice and selected. Right click, create your outlines. Now you see these little glowing blue lines that outline each letter, okay? You'll notice that the tail of the O overlaps with the tail of the P, which overlaps with the tail of the H, and so on and so forth. Now, if you forget to use the Pathfinder panel and unite your letters, then when you go to cut these out, the Glowforge will cut this, and then it'll cut that, right? And so you'll have almost a whole O, part of a P, this little stem, this little chunk, this little chunk, this tiny chunk, and it's just a disaster. So make sure that you remember to use Pathfinder Unite when you're using a script font. You don't have to do it with other fonts unless there are overlapping bits. So just, I always do, or I often do, just to stay in the habit of it so I'm not ever kind of second guessing, oh, do I do this or not? I just know for a fact that after I create outlines, I Pathfinder Unite, and you don't go wrong that way. Okay, so you have Sophia, and now I'm going to do the middle name, and the middle name that I'm using is Claire, and we're going to use the Wild Things, just the Wild Things Bold, so not the script version. I'm going to resize this using the edges here. So you'll notice, I'm going to zoom in just so we can see what we're doing, that as you hover your mouse around different points on this text box, different arrows pop up, right? So you'll want to use one of these diagonal or even the straight up and down arrow here. So any of these little squares on the corner and in the center is fine. This arrow actually rotates, so don't do that one, okay? And another thing you want to keep in mind is to hold down Shift as you resize so it maintains the proportions. If you don't do that, your letters will get stretched and that looks terrible. So don't do that. I've seen that too many times. Okay, so hold down Shift, click a corner or a centerpiece and drag until you like your size. Okay, I'm going to just nudge it up under here and maybe we'll make it a little bit smaller. So I like this placement, and I think it works really nicely for the overall shapes of this particular name. So we've got this P here that really cuts through things, so I wouldn't go all the way across. You've got to keep in mind that every sign is going to be a little bit different. So this part is more of an art than a science. It's part of the fun, wonderful part of design work. So whatever two names you're working with and whatever two fonts you're working with, those will all, the name itself, the letters involved in the name, and the font that you pick will impact your placement. But I like this placement. So whenever you get your letters the right size and how you want them, go ahead, right click, create outlines. Again, you don't have to Pathfinder Unite your non-script letters, but again, better safe than sorry, right? I always like to do that. So you can, at this point, still adjust placement, size, all that good stuff, but I'm happy with mine. So I'm going to go ahead and and select everything, and then just Pathfinder Unite, okay? Because I want to, at this point, be treating all of these letters as one unit, okay? So we don't have a separate word here and a separate word there. It's all one thing as far as the software is concerned. So at this point, I'm going to do an object path offset path. And you've seen me use offset paths for all sorts of things before. But right now, I'm going to do a pretty hefty offset. Let's try a 1 inch and see what we think. That's too much for me. Let's try a 0.75 inch. That's better. You might prefer a slimmer look here, in which case, try a 1/2 of an inch. But I actually really liked that 3/4 of an inch. I really love white oak, and I'm using that as my backing, so I really want to be able to see a lot of it. Now, depending on your font, a miter join might not be the answer. If you've got some weird spikes sticking out of part of your letters, and you might, go ahead and change it to a round offset instead, or a round join. Okay. On mine, it doesn't matter. There's 0 change when I do those two. But if you're having some strange spikes with a miter join, change it to a round and see if you like it better. Okay. Now, I like a miter join if there are kind of hard edges or corners that you want to preserve, because a round join will round those out. So again, pay attention to what it looks like on your specific design with your specific fonts and your specific names, and make an educated choice about it. All right, we're hitting OK. So now you've got offsets from, let's see here, Ophia, right? Offset from the dot from the I, offset from the S, offset from each of those little letters. And they're all selected right now, so it's a great time to hit Pathfinder Unite. Okay, go ahead and swap the fill and stroke, and you kind of have a visualization of what your sign is going to look like right now. You could certainly go deeper with the visualization and change this fill color to a wood color and change this to your acrylic color, but I'm happy with this right now. This looks great to me. I'm really thrilled. So what I want to do at this point, okay, so I clicked the letters and everything selected. That happens, and that's totally fine. So go ahead and object ungroup. All right, and now each piece is separate, which is kind of a pain, but it's all right. So click any of the letters. Go up to select same fill color. So that will select everything that is the same fill color. And right now we have 2 fill colors. We have none and we have black. So it selected all of my letters, and I'm going to object group that. Okay, and that is just so that all of this is being treated as one thing, and the stroke outline is being treated as its own separate thing, okay? Because here's what we're going to do. Yes, this is a complete design if you want a cutout sign with engraved letters. And by the way, that would look fantastic. That's not my design though, so let's keep going. So I'm going to copy and paste this text over here. And since I am cutting these letters out from acrylic, I want to just bulk up the letters a little bit. I notice on my laser with my acrylic that the laser burns away a little bit more acrylic than it does wood. So I'm nervous that these letters will end up a little thinner than I want them when all is said and done. So I'm going to do object path, offset path, and just do a tiny 0.01, like the smallest, smidgiest little offset. Okay, click off of it, come back and select, so everything, the offset and the original are selected, and just Pathfinder Unite, and then swap your fill and stroke so that it is a cut instead of an engrave. Okay, so I added that offset because my laser just melts away a little bit more acrylic than it does when it burns away wood. Okay, now why did I copy paste instead of just moving those letters off? Well, I'm going to use this as a placement guide for gluing down my letters later. And by glue, I mean just peel and stick my 3M. So we want to go ahead and create a negative offset here. And the reason we want to do that is so that our placement lines do not show after we have glued down our letters. We want the placement lines to be fully hidden when we glue down our letters. So object, path, offset path. And we're going to do a negative 0.04. And that is fine. We could even do a bigger one just to make extra sure. So I'm going to do a negative 0.05 on this one and hit OK. Now, right at this moment, before you click off or do anything else, your negative offset, so your smaller your smaller letters are selected and nothing else is. Take this opportunity to go ahead and switch your color, and you can see, right, that it is a fill, it's a green fill now, and swap your fill and stroke so you have a green stroke, okay, and go ahead and hit copy. So edit, copy, and then just delete it. Then select this, delete that too. I know that feels a little strange to just delete everything, but we're going to edit, paste in place. It's important that you use the edit, paste in place and not just the edit, paste, because if you edit, paste, it will just paste anywhere. That's not what we want. We want it to be exactly where it was before, and thankfully Illustrator has paste in place for that. All right. So at this point, when you load this into the Glowforge, once we save this, you'll load it into the Glowforge. You're going to set this as cut. You'll have to go in and manually change this part to score. Okay? When you load it, it will assume you want to cut that also, but you don't. You want to score it. So this you'll keep as a cut. This you'll change to a score. This you'll cut from probably a different material, right? Although it could look cool with the tone on tone. Anyway, and you should be good to go. So I'm going to just show you how to save this. If you are comfortable with this part already, then that's wonderful. I'm going to say Sophia Claire sign. And I always save as an Illustrator file first, just because it's easier if I need to go back and do something and edit the file later. It's easier to edit from an Adobe Illustrator file than from an SVG. Once you've saved it as an Illustrator file, go to File, Save As. It's important that you're Save As versus Export. Okay, so Save As, and just do SVG, hit Save, check to make sure you're 1.0, check to make sure responsiveness is off, and hit OK. If you create your own name sign using this tutorial, I would love to see it. Please tag me on Instagram at @thefabletree, and if you're curious to learn more about file design, enroll in FileMakers Academy. It's my comprehensive 5-week design program. I walk you through from the very simplest files to super, super complex files so you can handle anything that you can imagine. Until next week,